Hello everyone and welcome. In this video we're going to be checking out the Lexus GS350 F Sport. The GS350 is a four-door sedan, and this particular version features all-wheel drive as well as the F Sport and cold weather packages. The GS350 is a very aerodynamic vehicle with a coefficient of drag of only 0.27. Keep in mind the Prius generations are around the 0.25 to 0.26 range. Fairly aggressive front bumper, and these side ports here at the front feed air to cool the brakes. The rear spoiler, part of the F Sport package. Checking out the engine bay, everything is for the most part covered, which I'm not a huge fan of, but you do have access to all of the fluids. So you've got your brake fluid, which you can check there, your washer fluid here. You've got your engine coolant and the level reading, which you can see, and then finally your engine oil dipstick over here. So the main fluids are accessible even though everything is pretty much covered up. I do like the placement of the battery. They've got it as far back as possible towards the center of the vehicle, and it's actually all the way on the right as well. So you're kind of countering the weight of the driver by placing this battery on this side, and you want it as far back as possible to keep that weight towards the center of the vehicle rather than towards the outside. Here you can see the top of the front right suspension. This is an active variable suspension, so this right here is what's going to be altering the damping force. So let's follow the path that the air takes to get into the engine. So here we have our air filter in this box right here. Now that's fed from this intake up front. The air can come in here. Now when you close the hood, this will actually be covered. So what they have is these vents here, which open up to the front of the grille. So your air can come in here, vent through here, into the intake, through the air filter, then it'll pass back. And luckily, this cover here is pretty easy to remove. You can simply just pull it off. So now that we can see things better, you can see the air will come back. Here we have our throttle body, and as you can see, it's electronically controlled. There's a little motor in there. Now, Lexus calls this ETCSI, Electronic Throttle Control System with Intelligence. The intelligence meaning that it can be electronically controlled by the ECU based on different parameters. So this vehicle features several different drive modes: Eco, Normal, Sport, and Sport Plus. And depending on which you choose, one of the things this alters is the throttle mapping. So as you push the accelerator pedal down in Eco mode, the amount that the throttle opens is less than in Sport or Sport Plus mode, where you press the throttle and it's going to open up the throttle actually a little bit more based on how much you have the accelerator pedal depressed. Now, the traction control system as well as the stability control system can also alter the throttle based on your driving conditions, what's going on with the car. If it's losing control, it may limit the throttle so that you can maintain course. Now, if we follow that throttle body, we get to the intake manifold, and as you can see, it is plastic. And there's some good reasons for doing this in plastic. One of the big ones, of course, being cost, but also it's lightweight. And since you have this engine cover, it's typically not going to be seen anyways. So as you can see, 6 different runners for each one of the 6 cylinders. This is a 3.5 liter V6 engine. A bit difficult to see, but it is an aluminum block, and you can see the aluminum heads. Dual overhead cams, 24 valves in total, with dual continuously variable valve timing with intelligence. Dual meaning for both the intake and the exhaust. With a compression ratio of 11.5 to 1, this engine produces 306 horsepower at 6,400 RPM and 277 pound-feet of torque at 4,800 RPM. So peak torque is fairly late, but quite a powerful engine. The engine revving up to 6,600 RPM for the red line. So after passing through the 3.5 liter, the exhaust then exits through each side of the 3.5 liter, each of the cylinder banks. So it is a true dual exhaust. As you can see there's the first oxygen sensor on the exhaust manifold, and that will go all the way back to the rear. The power is sent to a 6-speed automatic gearbox, which is then sending power to all 4 wheels. And if you'd like, you can shift the gears yourself using the gear shift or paddle shifters. So power sent to all four wheels, and all four wheels with the F-Sport package include these 19-inch rims wrapped in Bridgestone 235/40 tires. For the F-Sport, 14-inch brakes up front, and you can see that duct which brings in cool air up from the front of the car. Double wishbone suspension, you've got the upper control arm here, lower control arm down here, and you'll notice both of these are aluminum, which is great to see, as well as the knuckle, all of that reducing the unsprung mass of the vehicle. Coil spring over the shock. These are gas-filled shocks which are electronically adjustable for the damping. You can see the pretty beefy anti-roll bar here, the steering link, and the drive axle with the CV joints. So for the rear, 12.2-inch disc brakes. And as you can see, the spring and shock are separately mounted. One of the reasons this may be done is to keep some of the space open in the trunk. As you can see, the spring is pretty wide, and they've got this shock tucked up right against the side. So that's directly inside of the trunk right there. So if you look in, that's going to be in this space right here, which is freed up. It also keeps this spring lower to the ground, and although it's minimal, it keeps the center of gravity lower. Now the rear uses a multi-link setup, so you can see link 1, 2, here's the toe link, that's 3, the lower, this one right here, connecting there, and 5 right here. So 5 multi-link arms. This prevents any movement except for vertical movement, basically, so it can just move up and down, and then you've got the toe adjustment right here. Again, extensive use of aluminum back here, which is cool to see. It definitely costs more, and it's something that probably could go easily unnoticed, so it's cool to see that they've taken some of the weight out, some of the unsprung weight, and used aluminum for the rear suspension as well, taking some of the weight out of the vehicle. So let's take a look at the interior. So the interior overall, very comfortable, leather seats with heating and ventilation. Plenty of room for my legs. I'm about 6'1", and plenty of space in the front at least. This features the navigation package, which includes a 12.3-inch screen. It also has an 835-watt sound system, which is actually really good. Overall, visibility is pretty good. You can see your blind spot if you check back pretty easily. Out the rear is pretty easy to see. And the front is a decent field of view. It's somewhat narrow, but overall visibility of the vehicle is pretty good. As far as ergonomics are concerned, the F-Sport features a 16-way adjustable front seat. This is actually one of my favorite features about this car, because you can actually adjust the side bolsters and hold yourself pretty snug in. Even someone as skinny as myself, I can get a pretty snug fit. So let's talk about some of the many features. We have 3 driver selectable front seat setups, power mirrors left and right. Also, all of the mirrors are auto dimming. You've got automatic wipers that you can have, rain sensing. You can turn traction control off as well as stability control off. And then you also have a heated steering wheel. Push button start. If you do not have your foot on the brake, you can push that and it will power on but not start the engine. And then if you press it one more time, you can power all of the systems. And if you do have your foot on the brake and press it, goes ahead and starts up. And to shut it off, simply press that button. Now, as I mentioned before, you have several selectable driver modes. So depending on which mode you select, it shows you what's being altered. So for the Eco mode as well as the Sport mode, you can see that it's altering the throttle mapping. So you've got a little chart down there which is showing you basically the accelerator pedal position versus how open the throttle is. And then if you switch it over to Sport Plus mode, you can see that it also alters your damping, stiffens that up a bit, and it also alters your steering, stiffens that up as well. And these changes are also reflected on the front dash, so you can see Eco mode in blue or Sport mode in red. And actually in Eco mode, when you're in blue, it alters how blue it is based on how eco-friendly you're driving. Now, one of the features that I really like, and is quite a unique feature to Lexus, is this remote touch for the screen up here. And basically it's a mouse for this screen. And I had used one on a previous Lexus many years ago when these were first coming out, and I didn't care for it that much, but using this one, it's actually really good, I think. And it's simple, it's something unique to Lexus, and it actually works pretty well. So depending on what you want to select, it actually locks in place. So as you're selecting, it kind of hits a little stop, as you can see there. Its motion is restricted, so you're selecting the different options. And you can do the whole thing with just a single finger and move around to the different systems. Now, the display also features something called Lexus Inform App Suite, where you can access different apps on your phone within the vehicle. So if we go into that, and then we can go into apps, and then you've got a pretty limited selection of what you can actually access. Bing, but it only really searches for locations. It's not a full browser. Pandora, you can access your music stations. Yelp, which is useful. And that's really about it. That's not a full Facebook. So it does have app features, but it's quite limited. It'd be nice if it had Spotify as well as a full browser, access to the various GPSs that you have on your phone, so you can use whatever GPS you want. And you know, it's always going to be up to date and has all the different information that you want stored in it that's already on your phone. Now, Google and Apple are working on their own solutions to this, so I think this will improve over time, the functionality and the different features and apps that you can use. Sitting in the rear, not a tremendous amount of legroom, but this is with the front seat in the position that I would have it in while driving. So behind the driver, but it does have these contours in the chair so that your knees do fit fairly well. I do fit, it just wouldn't be the greatest thing for a long drive. You've also got this center console area which folds down, storage compartment, and you can even access the trunk. Seating for the unfortunate center passenger is a bit cramped because you've got this big hump due to the all-wheel drive system. All right, let's go for a little test drive. So I'm going to start out in Eco mode. So starting off, it's definitely comfortable. The seats are great. The steering wheel leather wrapped, and it also kind of has a little cushiony feel to it, so it gives in a little bit as you squeeze down on it, which is nice, and it's got good locations for your hands. One thing you'll notice in all of the modes, except for the Sport Plus, is that the steering's pretty effortless. Doesn't really require much to get it to turn, little feel involved, but you can change that by switching it over to the Sport Plus mode, and when you do that, it really does increase the amount of effort it takes in order to turn that steering wheel, which is kind of nice. I actually like it, especially if you're going for some aggressive driving. It does feel pretty good. Now, if you're not and you're just kind of cruising around town, it probably does feel a lot better to not have to put in nearly as much effort into the corners. This car definitely does sound good when you step on it. As you can hear there, makes a good sound, and it can go pretty well. 306 horsepower all-wheel drive. I think Lexus says the 0 to 60 of 5.8 seconds, which is pretty good for a car considering how much it weighs. It's just about 4,000 pounds, which is a lot, but for a luxury sedan of this class, it's not too bad. Hear that engine. Another thing that the Sport Plus will do is it'll keep the revs higher in the transmission. So as you're driving around, if you put it in eco mode and you step on it, it'll actually go the whole way up the rev range, but once you let off the gas, it'll drop down to a higher gear, whereas the Sport or Sport Plus, it'll keep it in a higher gear for longer. So after you let off the gas, you'll still be in a higher rev range, so you can get back on the power very quickly. I really do like the way this car drives. Pretty good braking as well. 14-inch front brakes, which are pretty massive. Now, the paddle shifters I don't really use too much. I was messing around with them, and they're fine, they work, they do what they're supposed to do, but because this is just a regular automatic gearbox, not like a dual clutch or anything like that, so the transmission gear shifts aren't going to be that quick, so it just doesn't have the response that you kind of want when you flick one of those paddles. There's kind of a delay, so it feels best to just kind of leave it in the automatic mode and let it do its thing. So, driving on the highway, noise levels are pretty low, definitely better than some of the cars I'm used to driving, so pretty good there. One thing I will say is it's pretty noticeable between the Eco and the Sport Plus mode, or the Sport mode, as far as the throttle. When you look at the instantaneous fuel economy, you can read that on the dash, and depending on how much you press on the pedal, you can, watch your fuel economy go way down low. And it's quite a noticeable difference when you're in the Eco versus when you press on the gas in the Sport mode. It dips quite a bit lower, and you can tell that you're using a bit more gas to accelerate. So I took this on a 52.4 mile test run to measure the fuel economy, and as an average, we got fuel economy of 25.9 miles per gallon for the trip. Now this is rated at 19 city and 26 highway, so this is just under the highway rating. This is a combination of both city and highway over these 52.4 miles. So 25.9 miles per gallon, not bad, all things considered. It's a fairly large engine, 3.5 liters, 4,000 pound car almost. And also considering the fact that it's all-wheel drive, getting 26 miles per gallon in a combination of city and highway isn't too bad. Now this was driven pretty non-aggressively, basically just took it out how I would normally drive if I wasn't trying to have any fun, or basically just get to wherever I was going. Overall, it's a fun car to drive in the Sport Plus mode. When you get into the Eco mode, the throttle response really isn't quite there, and it downshifts a bit too quickly for some enthusiast driving, but if you're just driving around town, it's probably perfect for it. So it makes sense that it's there, and it's cool that it actually does make a real change. The other thing, of course, with the Sport Plus mode, it does stiffen up the suspension, so you stay a little bit flatter in the corners. Not a whole lot of notice there, but the thing that you definitely do notice is the steering feel between Sport Plus and any of the other ones. The steering feel is significantly more heavy, more sturdy, requires more effort in order to turn, and it feels good when you're going through a corner with that.